McCarthy Insurance Group, serving the community for over 70 years. For home, farm, motor, life, health and business insurance, log on to mig.ie or free phone 1800 50 11 11. Probably your best call in 2024. Charles McCarthy Insurance is trading as McCarthy Insurance Group, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award-winning Niall Boylan Show.
The first thing I want to talk about is RTE. Sure, why not? The RTE Chief Financial Officer, Richard Collins, has resigned. He was the guy, by the way, in the Oireachtas who said he didn't know how much he earned. Anyway, in a statement, RTE said Mr. Collins would work on a handover, and that is in the process of identifying a replacement CFO. That will ensure, of course, he gets a little bit of a few quid to go. Richard will assist in any ongoing process to the extent that this may be required by RTE, according to RTE. We wish to thank Richard for his hard work. The amount of flip-flops that he procured... No, I put that bit in. We wish to thank Richard for his hard work and the contribution to RTE over the past 3 years. And we wish him every success in the future. The Minister for Media, Catherine Martin, said that she was aware that Mr. Collins was likely to be leaving, but that she does not have a role in the internal staffing matters in RTE. At a post-budget briefing, the Minister said that the fall in the TV licence revenue could cost RTE1 this year, RTE, €61 million over the year and next year. And the figure was identified by the government advisory agency, NURA, or it's actually New ERA, which has recommended 40 million in additional funding for RTE to cover some of the shortfall. And the Minister said that the money will not be paid until she sees a strategic plan from the broadcaster, which is due to be completed in the coming weeks. Ms. Martin confirmed that at the briefing that RTE will receive 16 million in additional funding and not the 40 million they've requested for the time being. RTE has also been hit with a sharp fall, as I said, the TV licence revenue following the revelations in June of the over the undeclared salary given to Ryan Tubridy. Mr. Collins was among RTE executives grilled by politicians at the Oireachtas Committee hearings following revelations over the under declaration of Mr. Tubridy's salary. That's from RTE, by the way. They put the word under in twice, but there you go. Now, here's the thing, right? People have lost faith in RTE. They just completely have lost faith in RTE. And do you blame them? That's really the question, isn't it? Do you blame them losing faith in RTE? When they're handing out money for 20 quid or €20, for a pair of flip-flops, and they're buying, well, $5 grand or $6 grand worth of them or something, whatever it was, and they're spending money on gig tickets and all sort of ridiculous things, and their bills are astronomical and their salaries are astronomical. Do you blame people turning around saying, I'm not paying the television licence. I'm not giving them 160 quid to get 7 pairs of flip-flops out of my money. You know what I mean? I can understand why people felt like that. And judges now in court are kind of feeling the same way. There was a judge there during the Oireachtas hearings. And what they normally do is people who haven't paid their television licence are brought to court on the same day. They'll just don't normally do them all on the one day. And the judge, not that he struck them all out because he can't, because by law he's not allowed to do that, but he only made them pay the television licence. He didn't send them to jail. He didn't fine them. He just made them pay the television licence. Pay it or you're going to jail. Whereas he could have sent them to jail. He could have given them a fine for not paying it, but he said no. He kind of understood why people were refusing to pay it. That didn't help the cause for RTE. That encouraged more people not to bother paying it. Now, I don't want to encourage people not to pay it because it's an important debate as to whether if the state are not willing to continue to fund RTE, and that funding is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the question has to be asked, is it actually, do we need it anymore? If it's costing this much money, do we actually need it? It's a lot of taxpayers' money to go into RTE. So you answer the question for me. Would you shed a tear if RTE had to close its doors tomorrow? I think, to be fair, I would shed a tear for the staff. The hard-working staff in RTE, the ones that aren't getting undeclared amounts of money, the ones that are on the average wage. They're probably few and far between. But I would shed a tear for them. But would you shed a tear for everybody else? Would you shed a tear for RTE? Would you shed a tear because you won't be able to switch on your telly and watch RTE anymore? Let me know. The number, as usual, is 087 188 0008. That's 087 188 0008. Would you miss RTE if it wasn't there? Ross, hi.
Well, Niall, how are you going?
Good. Ross, would you shed a tear?
Not I hope. I hope Jeremy Dixon isn't listening because this subject wouldn't go down well with him at all.
Right.
He's a bit of a Tubridy fan. He cut me off there. Actually, anyone that said anything bad about Ryan Tubridy, he just cut him off. You were on holidays, I think.
All right, okay. But, well, as long as you didn't say anything litigious about him. You know what I mean?
No, he just wouldn't listen to anyone that said anything about Tubridy negative. No, and he just cut him off. I'm not listening.
Well, I'm not him, thankfully.
Jeremy.
Yeah. Okay.
Jeremy,
okay. Yeah. Okay. You've said his name now 5 times. We're grand. We know. We know his name. Yeah. Go on. Make your point, Ross.
No, I tell you what I do is I wouldn't shed a tear for RTE, but I would. Do you know that meme that's going around? There's like 10 lads standing around a hole, and there's a guy in the hole with a shovel digging the hole.
Yeah.
And they're all there. Manager, due to cutbacks, we have to get rid of Dave. I feel sorry for the Dave in RTE.
Dave is the one with the shovel, yeah.
Dave is the one with the shovel, and if the manager's all standing there, if 20 of them say with their arms folded, due to cutbacks, we have to sack Dave. Manager, duty manager, deputy duty manager,
assistant deputy duty manager, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just absolutely, and do you know what? It's the people in the background that get absolutely no recognition.
Yeah, no, I do feel sorry for the Daves.
I do for them.
Yeah.
But all the preachers and just all the big dicks that have been there for years that are just looking at
the members of the board. Like, who are they? Members? Why do they need members of a board?
But yeah, even some of the newsreaders that have all been there, and you'd see them getting in, and all of their political debates are all one-sided. Even interviews that aren't in the RTE studio, just say they're interviewing, or they're getting interviewed by, I don't know, a radio station or something, and they're all singing from the same hymn.
Now, in fairness, I did listen to Micheál Martin this morning on Morning Ireland, right? Just briefly. Now, I don't know who the interviewer was. I can't remember her name. But she was very good. She did give him a good going over. You know?
Yeah, but that's the thing, you see. Yeah, there are some good people in RTE, but I'm talking about the ones that are honest. Like, you look at it and there's
Is there anything you watch on RTE that you enjoy, that you'd say, I'd miss that now?
No.
I like Ken. I like Ken. I do like Ken. And I do like prime time every now and again. You know?
No, I don't. I don't look at anything on RTE. I actually
Sport? Do you have sport on it, Ross?
No, I don't. I don't look at RTE at all. I haven't looked at RTE since the start of COVID. I haven't looked at RTE, and
right, okay.
I know I'm not the only one thinks that, but
no, I know, and there's quite a lot of people lost faith in RTE, particularly during COVID, because they felt they didn't challenge it enough or challenge the state or the government or the policies and the lockdowns and everything else that went along with it. And I get that.
But sure, they wouldn't though, because sure they're, you know.
Well, they should.
Yeah, but they wouldn't, because if they challenge the government, it's just not going to go well for them. That's a completely separate debate. But no, they wouldn't, and it's just
so. But do you not think we? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some countries that don't have a national broadcaster, right? You know, it's all privatized. But do you not think we need a national broadcaster? Because let's be clear about it. When you have private companies, you know, be it Ireland's Classic Hits Radio, be it Fox News or CNN or, you know, Sky News, they're biased because they're being paid for by somebody and they don't have to be as impartial as, you know, a public service broadcaster. Well, they're not, well, if you want to call RTE impartial. You know what I mean?
I'll put it this way, all right? No one trusts RTE now. And to be honest with you...
when you say no one, some people do. Some people trust them.
Yeah, the diehard Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael heads trust RTE. But RTE have never once given anyone, all right? And and even on the radio, they've never once given anyone, and they're too politically biased. There's no in-between with them. They're completely biased. And it's just, I remember they had the debate on, they had Leo, Micheál, and there was that, and then everyone was like, bring in Mary Lou. Okay?
Yeah.
And then they brought in, and Mary Lou Dittany, she went in. Then I remember Brian Dobson interviewed her, and my God, it was an atrocious interview. And Dobson was like, "Da-da-da-da-da-da." She'd speak. "Da-da-da-da-da-da." Dobson was there, the IRA, "Da-da-da-da-da-da." The IRA, "Da-da-da-da-da-da." Comments, the IRA. It was just like, yeah, no. And they're too biased. And like I said, the people need someone they can trust and someone who will work for them. And RTE have been, for years, just too biased.
And by the way, they should be challenging everybody the way you described. They challenged Mary Lou. They should be challenging Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and their failures too. Absolutely.
But that's the thing, you see. They didn't. They had two presenters, and they had Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar. And I remember it, two of them were up, and they did not ask either of them one tough question.
Yeah, they had. It was Miriam O'Callaghan and David. What's his face?
Yeah.
I do remember.
And then they had Mary Lou on, Brian Dobson, and he just fired ridiculous questions that, like, there's no right or wrong answer. That whatever answer you give is the wrong answer. And it's just.
Are you Sinn Féin fan yourself, Ross?
Do you know what? I'm not a fan of any one particular party, to be honest with you. I give all the political parties a chance. I'm not going to say I'm a big Sinn Féin man and screw Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. To be honest with you, none of them are good now.
Well, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. But we've gone on into politics. Stay there, Ross, for a second. Let me go to Billy. Billy, there you go. Ross wouldn't shed a tear if RTE had to close the shutters tomorrow.
Jesus, Niall, I had one frame of thought coming on here when I was asked, and then Ross is after putting me on the defensive for RTE because I think some of the comments he's made there are quite crude to some of the journalists that work on RTE.
Yeah, there's some good journalists in RTE.
The likes of Mary Wilson, who roasts politicians on a very regular basis, of all colours, of all political persuasions. She roasts them, absolutely and rightly so. Brian Dobson, another stand-up journalist who roasts politicians on a regular basis. These are the type of journalists that we need. We need people who challenge. Now, I'm not a fan of the talent, as they're referred to in RTE. The high-paid Joe Duffys, Ray Darcy's, Ryan Tuberty's before he went, and the fact that 2FM and RTE2 still exist in this day and age when you have Virgin Media or whatever it's called this week.
Yeah, you don't. 2FM should be privatised because there's already You Radio out there. Yeah,
exactly.
It's not a public service.
There's yourselves. There's.
Well, 2FM is meant to be for the youth market. You already have iRadio and Spin Radio out there.
It is a musical radio station, I would say, and there's plenty of those in the market that cater to different tastes, and it's not.
No, it's not public service. Yeah,
it's not public. It's not public service anymore. The TV license, let's be honest, there probably should be a broadcasting charge, and the likes of yourselves and independent radio should get a portion of that.
Yeah, well, here's the argument, and I'm going to say something to you, Billy. I was only talking to a CEO of a radio station, and he was telling me that he wouldn't want it. And I tell you why he wouldn't want it. He said to me, "I wouldn't take it off them because if I did, I'd be expected to do something for it." Do you understand what I'm saying?
The question then is the advertisers that you have, and your particular show doesn't apply to, but that argument could be made for any advertiser that puts on an ad on a radio station. Just because they're paying for advertising, does that mean that you are beholden to the requests of the advertisers?
Well, not necessarily, but if you're getting money from the Broadcasting Authority, or from not the Broadcasting Authority anymore, they're not called that anymore, but if you're getting money from the state, a portion of the television license, let's say, for example, Classic Hits got 500,000 every year off the state, well, then we would be expected to provide more than we're providing at the moment in relation to the Irish language, more than we're providing at the moment in relation to news and current affairs, more than we're providing in maybe sports coverage. And all that costs money, and it's, a lot of work. And,
but you see, Niall, I think if they went down that path, they'd have to look at the way that the Broadcasting Authority, or however it's referred to these days, works. Because there are some stations like News Talk that do sports from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. every night. Mm-hmm. Yourself, you come on and do this type of show from 9 to 12. There's different audiences that listen to different things. And if you're going to give, they can't all do the same thing, because then they will just be competing for the same listenership across the board. There's different people who like different things. You need to appeal to the different markets that are out there. You're not going to, if you did do an Irish radio show for an hour every week,
you'd have no listeners.
the chances are people aren't going to tune in. They're going to listen to Orna G, or they're going to listen to
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
Irish
look, don't get me wrong.
language
Tina G is great for the Irish audience, but it's a very small audience. It wouldn't survive in the private sector, right? The
No,
same
it
goes with
wouldn't.
Radio
It
Naguel
would
Tuck or whatever it happens to be. So they're public service because they service a small amount of people.
And Niall, two RTE radio stations, multiple RTE radio stations, but two RTE television stations would not survive if it was not for private industry paying for advertising on them.
Oh, I know. Okay, but but get back to what Ross says. Ross says we wouldn't miss them. Sure, he doesn't watch RTE anyway.
Well, I don't watch a lot of RTE. I do listen to RTE radio in the mornings. I do listen to the news on RTE in the mornings particularly. But I think if I would miss elements of RTE, yes, and that's the public service remit and the public service broadcasting.
But they're in big trouble, and I mean big trouble.
They're in massive trouble.
61. There's a shortfall of 61 million they predict over the next 2 years.
It shows a lack of trust in what's happened in the institution over the last number of years, rightly or wrongly with the COVID stuff. I have a different opinion to Ross and I'd say many others on their reporting during COVID. I would put that down to, it was a state of emergency, much like the Second World War was.
Do you not think they went? Now, I have to say, I don't necessarily completely agree with Ross. I do believe there were some impartial debates, very few.
It was,
but I do believe they were biased.
It was a state of emergency.
It doesn't matter. They didn't challenge what was going on.
It very much does matter, Niall. It was a state of emergency.
But they have a duty. They're a public service broadcaster. So they had a duty to pull in Tony Holohan. They had a duty to pull in, Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin, whoever it was from Neffet, and say, €9 meal. Is there something wrong with yous? Are you mental? They had a duty to do that. You know what I mean?
But now, during a state of emergency, now their remit is to report what the government are asking them to report in the interest of public safety and public information.
Without question, Billy. But that's not a good public service broadcaster.
If you put yourself into a wartime analogy, and someone came on the radio saying Dublin's going to be bombed tonight. If you went back to the 1940s and the North Strand is going to be bombed tonight, they're not going to ask for debate on whether the North Strand will be bombed.
Well, no, you may not in that initial decision. And I said this to everybody about the first, week or two, or certainly the first couple of months of COVID. Everybody was in the same boat. It was uncharted territory. And yes, we were right to believe everything we heard. But after a couple of months, once we knew where the sun was setting and once we knew what the data was and we knew the mortality, questions should have been asked about our priorities. And our priorities should have been the elderly people and those over the age of 70 who are genuinely vulnerable and not those under 70.
You're looking at that now through the lens of hindsight.
No. People had said it after. There was numerous, gold standard tests done in relation to particularly those cruise ships where they knew exactly what the data was and they knew exactly the risks, but they still continue down the same path of this kind of overshadowing and overprotecting everybody when really we should have been protecting the vulnerable.
We're going down a path of a COVID debate.
No, I didn't want to do that. What I'm saying, the point I'm making is RT didn't question it.
Yeah, they didn't question it, but at the time now they didn't question it because they were delivering a public service message, which was the message that they had to give out for the government. It was in the aim of public safety.
For 2 years, they had to keep giving out that message, unquestioned, for 2 years.
They didn't really give it out for a full 2 years, in fairness.
Well, they did. They're still giving it out. Go way out of it. They're still giving out the COVID message 2.5 years later.
What are they giving out 3 years later, Ross?
No, but in fairness, Ross, they're not talking about it now. Okay, but anyway, look, I don't want to focus so much on COVID, but getting back, Billy, I understand they provide. Well, hang on. Let me. To be fair to RT, Prime Time is a great program. There's been some wonderful exposés over the last 10 years in relation to care homes, nursing homes, children's creches. All those kind of exposés were amazing and brilliant, and it exposed a lot of bad stuff happening in the country, the Catholic Church, etc., etc., etc. The news can be good by times. I'm not a huge fan of RT News 61 News, but it can be good at times. The sports coverage,
investigative journalism into the likes of Sean Quinn, into
absolutely.
Into different scandals, into the mother and baby homes.
Yeah, there's been good TV shows like Kin. I really enjoyed Kin. We all enjoyed Love Hate going back a few years ago too.
But you see, Niall, I would, to be fair, I haven't watched Kin, and I wouldn't have a problem with getting rid of that entertainment factor for RTE. Give it away. Sell it. Sell RTE too. Let the independent media producers come in and produce that material and put it onto that station. You know, it is what it is. RTE should focus on public service broadcast, news and current affairs, and investigative journalism, and give them a stipend. Give them, if you
would you move them out of Donnybrook?
Definitely, they don't need to be in Donnybrook. Are you joking? It's a huge site in
billions.
the most valuable area code in Dublin, and they're sitting there with acres that are not even half full at this stage, from what I've heard.
Okay, we'll stay there for a second. You can take 3 if you want to, Jane. Let me go to Morris. Morris, hi, how are you?
Well, how are you doing?
Well, you heard Billy. He would be sad to see it go because, obviously there needs to be changes, but he'd be sad to see it go because he believes it's valuable.
Listen, I can understand where people are coming from, but to me at the moment, RTE is a spent force. They lost the trust of the people. The people in there are overpaid, underworked. It's a financial burden on the state. Sell the whole lot of Montrose and all, lock, stock and barrel, and then put the station out for tender for a 20-year lease and let people bid for it and give them 10, 15 years to set it up and then renew the contract again. It's gone down the road of the taxpayer bailing out this country over and over and over again, and we're sick of it. And the very people we trusted to do us right and give us the service that...
Oh, hold on, we get you back there. Sorry, Morris, we lost you there for a second. I do apologise. We are talking about RTE, and the reason we're talking about them is because 61 million is the predicted figure that they will lose in revenue this year, by the end of this year and next year. And that's because people are not paying their television licence. And I want to know, do you think it'll be a loss to Ireland? As a public broadcaster, would you miss RTE? Sorry about that, Morris. I do apologise. Getting back to you there now.
No, you're back.
I haven't left.
Yeah, neither have I. I heard somebody said, get that station to pay their phone bill and cut me off.
I can tell you a funny story about a radio station I was in many years ago. And at the time, there's a thing called, the line you're on at the moment is what they call a virtual line. It's not a real phone line, right? It's called a VoIP, right? And this radio station that I was working in, VoIPs were only out at the time. And the way it used to work was the radio station would have to top up the credit once a month on it. We had 4 phone lines.
Right.
And I was talking to somebody on the air. I was only in the station a week, and I was talking to somebody like you on the air. And all of a sudden was, please put more credit in your account. And that went out on the air. And I'm going, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. We have credit in the account. Anyway, getting back to RTE. So, Billy thinks it's still important. And I understand the point that he's making. And there are some things at RTE that we need to some degree. They're meant to be impartial, I suppose. And that, it's a public service. You've got the sports coverage, you've got news coverage, primetime investigative journalism and all that kind of stuff. But the rest of it, you don't believe it's necessary. You believe it should be all privatised.
I think so now, because they've gone down the public route and there's nothing but corruption there and taxpayers' money being wasted. So the very people we trusted to run things for us properly and look after the pennies and the pounds and the halfpennies were blatantly using it like as if it was a slush fund for personal individuals within RTE. And what did they do? They went up in front of the public representative body in Dáil Éireann. They were questioned, I'm resigning. And nobody can do anything about it. And these people putting in medical certs saying, I'm not medically fit to come in front of the board. But they can turn up every week on the dole, and they can turn up every week and collect their pension or whatever their entitlements are. So I just think they could sell off Montrose, lock, stock and barrel, and put the station up for public tender and let people bid for it under tender for 20 years. It'll take
I agree with you to some degree, right? But the problem is when you privatise something, it ends up in the hands of, say, somebody like Rupert Murdoch, or it's an individual who has their own bias. So we see, for example, what, the Sun newspaper, Talk TV or GB News, if you're into that and you're slightly leaning to the right, they're great television stations. And the same goes for Fox News. It goes to the right, just a great TV station. If you're left-leaning, you go to CNN or Sky News. So what I'm saying is they end up leaning to one side or the other if it's privatised. And so you're not really getting good impartial news. That's the problem.
I understand. And I mean to say, if you put money in and you invest in it, it will go good. But I mean to say, people are overpaid in that place and underworked. doing a couple of hours every week and coming out with big money.
And there are, you're right.
We'll never see in their life. Yeah, exactly.
There's big earners in RTE doing very little work. Yeah, but there are hard-working people in RTE in the back room doing all the work.
Get paid very little and get paid very little and are abused and are kept on minimum wages. Like Gabe Bourne was an institute in this country, right? And they kept him on a 3-month rolling contract. 2FM died when Jerry Ryan died 13 years ago. That station hasn't done a tap since that man passed away under tragic circumstances, and we all know what went on in his life. And he paid the ultimate price for burning the candle at both ends. He's not here. And he probably would be ashamed at the way things are going on, but that's another story. But look, £2 million was lost on the musical, The Toy Story. And your man says, why did you put so much money into it? We thought it would have been a great seller. But you didn't realise that Ryan Tubridy wasn't on board.
Yeah.
Because he wanted money for doing that outside his
ordinary
walking hours. Yeah, of course, and which he's entitled to. Because if you have Gabe Bourne and Jerry Ryan advising Tubridy and saying, don't let them do to you what they done to us. And he didn't, and he's paying the price for it now. So I think the people of Ireland deserve better. Close it down, sell it off. It's part of our history. They tried, it didn't work, and let's move forward with a private franchise that puts on programs that makes everybody happy. And the only 3 things I'd miss is the Angelus Garda Patrol and the Meaning of Life.
Is Garda Patrol still on?
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was still on. Thanks for that, Morris. By the way, some of your texts coming in. Sorry, Dominic, Derry-Ann and Eddie, I'll be with you in a second. Some of your texts coming in. RTE were biased. Bias is you know what. They scared the life out of people. They were relentless and showed no empathy or emotion towards the nation or its elderly. The reporting was on a loop of the old drivel and scaremongering over and over again. They held hands in RTE reception and they hugged and they kissed while everyone they reported to was afraid to call into their next door neighbour. They have so much to answer for. Their jobs became so easy as it was like a Ferris wheel of fear. The nation should never forget, and part of me thinks that's the main reason why so many people have decided not to pay for their television licence. Good on each and every one of them, as now we are watching karma in real time and the ship is sinking. There you go. Dominic, hi, how are you?
Niall, how are you? You okay?
I don't agree completely with all of that, but I think the person is right who sent that in, that the karma is coming back as far as some people are concerned out there because they've refused to pay the television licence for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, look, I'm listening to the debate there, and there's some interesting stuff. I think kind of looking at future focus here, though, kind of looking at exactly what the purpose is of a national broadcaster. And I hear the debate regarding, privatising it, etc. I think we've got enough kind of privatised organisations that can fulfil that sector, and I wouldn't necessarily think too many people would want to be buying RTE and taking over, 2Ping people over, and all that sort of stuff's concerned as well. So,
yeah, well, there's a danger in privatisation. I mentioned Rupert Murdoch a few minutes ago, so there's a danger.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think ultimately the purpose of a national broadcaster, and I get what it is. Basically, people want to have your kin and basically your entertainment, but ultimately it's about information being provided to ourselves as basically citizens of Ireland. Okay, in a way that's actually neutral. So things like, for example, Gaza going on right now. I want to know what's actually happening rather than someone putting a twist on it. So, as you mentioned earlier on, if I'm watching Fox News, for example, it will really very much depend on who's actually paying for the advertising as to what twist I'm going to get. And I think to a certain extent, with regarding the license fee, is basically we're the stakeholders when you pay for your license fee. We're actually the people who's actually the investors in that. So we expect back what we pay for, and what we're paying for is neutral reporting.
Well, are we getting that? Because that seems to be everybody's complaint.
That's what's not happening. So that's the reason why everyone's saying ditch it, burn it, get rid of it, etc. I think to a certain extent, from a future point of view, it could be a case of sell Montrose, get rid of it, etc., but really scale back and think about what is the purpose of an RTE. And I think what we're trying to look at here is the core part of it. It's certainly news and current affairs, okay? And then you've actually got your add-ons like sport, for example. For me, I played golf when I was younger, and it used to be on television, and everything's now pay for play and things of that concern. And getting people into sport is a problem. If it was free on television to watch, you'd probably have more kids actually engaged in it, etc. But people are paying too much money for that. I don't want to kind of go down that route. But the purpose of what the national broadcaster is. Really
but it's lost its purpose, Dominic. I mean, people have mentioned 2FM. 2FM is a classic example. 35 million or whatever it costs, right? It costs more than that. Sorry. Yeah. But anyway, that's license fee money going into it. It's a youth station. You've iRadio, you've Spin Radio. You have loads of youth stations in the country playing music because that's all they really do. You've got some nice presenters. They don't need it. It's not public service broadcasting. That's a waste of money.
Correct. And what happens is, and then in order to subsidise that, you're going to have to then basically get in advertising, etc. And then what eventually happens is, as you say, you end up basically with over-expensive flip-flops. Really, at the end of the day, again, I think my position here on this is really scale back. It doesn't really matter if it's basically in Dublin 4 or basically in Wicklow or Donegal, wherever the hell you want to have this place. But the point being is, what is actually the purpose and who are the stakeholders? Who are the people putting the money into this? I don't necessarily want to see. I think there should be an independent broadcasting watchdog that's not government bias, as you say, regarding the COVID reporting, for example. That was an example of manipulation there. You can argue. Some people might say it was actually good reporting. But I think we're seeing quite a lot of things like Prime Time Investigates when there's no real kind of there's no one influence in that. That's basically pure good reporting. Okay,
they have had some good. Yeah, well, they've had some good stuff over the last 10 years. We've covered a lot of it on this show, including nursing homes, creches, and all that stuff that they brought out into society, and we realised what was going on, the abuse that was going on for the elderly as well, and the Women of Honour recently within the army. A lot of that stuff was good. But here's the thing, I can probably count them on two hands, over the last 10 years. Because, well, unfortunately, the last 10 years has been shrouded by COVID. I thought during COVID, they were useless. Absolutely useless.
No, and it was basically, you don't want to go down Tony Holohan, basically, the Tony Holohan show every night, and basically, let's all clap him. But I know that sounds, again, I don't want to go down that route. But as you say, it was the reporting side of that is of public interest. So I'm happy to pay for my license fee, which is because I pay my Sky, for example. That's one fee. But what I'd be quite more than happy to do is actually pay my license fee. So when I turn the news on, I'm getting basically impartial reporting. And as one gentleman just said there earlier on, is basically not drilling through basically one political party and then basically letting the other one kind of go easy. And I think you kind of get that a little bit more in the BBC. I don't know, I'm Irish, by the way, just in case anyone's hearing my accent. But
what would you do? By the way, if you were the Director General of RTE, Kevin Backhurst, who's the new Director General of RTE, what changes would you make tomorrow if you walked in the door?
He's screwed. He can't make changes. It needs to be a completely new setup, and that setup needs to be dissolved. No different to what you have as far as basically dissolving banks in the banking crisis, whereby it's literally you've got just Anglo-Irish Bank. That's basically RTE right now.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, all the stuff that's there, the inherent stuff the stuff that he's inherited, he can't get rid of it.
Yeah, there's a classic saying from my background is HR and things like that. There's a classic saying there. I think it's a guy called Peter Drucker once said basically culture basically eats strategy for breakfast.
Okay, so we know there's a bad culture in there. There's a bad culture of overspending. There's a bad culture of not caring because it's not their money. There's a bad culture of running things badly. There's a bad culture of too many people doing one job. For example, we do a talk show here. It's just myself and Jane, and that's it. We do 3 hours of content. Some night we'll have politicians on. Some nights we've guests on our interviews or whatever it is, and then we do a little bit of chat as well. But we do it with two people. You take the Joe Duffy show, which is basically a caller interactive show, just like this one, which is less than half the length of this show. It's only an hour and 15 minutes, and they have probably 12 people working on it.
Yeah, you have that. I mean, obviously that's overspend. But the thing is, if you think about it from a change management perspective, you'll spend basically 3-4 times basically the amount of money that would be to set up a new entity from scratch. To actually you'll end up spending an absolute fortune on management consultancy firms coming in telling you the time. And by the end of it, basically, we'll have investigations, and we'll have basically Oireachtas meetings. We'll have inquiries and everything. By the end of it, just scrap it, liquidate the assets, put it down as a bad bank, and then basically move on to the next thing of saying what exactly is the core part of it. What is it? What do we want as far as we're now basically in a new century? Let's look at basically what we want from a citizenship in Ireland. What do we want from our national broadcaster, and how much are we willing to pay for it? So I'm quite happy to pay, 160 quid per year if I switch the television on, and I know basically the news I'm looking at is unbiased and it's basically proper reporting.
I mean, the same thing is happening with the BBC. And, if you look at the BBC, it's swung from being a conservative television station to being quite a liberal television station. Now, quite the opposite, actually. The pendulum has completely swung in the opposite direction. And, people give out of the BBC now as well. And they were always I suppose, the paragon of impartiality, but they're not anymore.
No, and that's where a watchdog needs to be over that. And what I mean by watchdog is basically of the people. So, you've kind of got, like, for example, the Senate here, and you got they're made up not as politicians, but made up as should be lay people, really, but from different backgrounds to actually oversee what we want as basically a national broadcaster. And it's not it shouldn't be jobs for the boys. There's quite a lot of jobs for the boys in Ireland.
The nepotism is rife in there, and we all know that. By the way, but just finally, in relation to that, do you believe that RTE, from your experience, do you think RTE leans to the left when you talk about bias?
Do I think they lean to the left? I suppose when I'm looking at interviews and what have you, that they would go easy basically on certain political parties and go hard on others. And is it fair or not? I suppose, as one gentleman there said, basically once Sinn Féin comes on, which I wouldn't support, by the way, I'm not Sinn Féin, but
they should be treated fairly. Yeah.
But from a neutral person, I would actually be saying, they're talking about future and how exactly are you going to pay for housing, etc. I don't want to hear about basically IRA in the past.
No, the past tense.
Let's talk about let's talk about the future here. And if your numbers don't add up, then I'm going to quiz you on that. Whereas if we spend the next hour basically talking about stuff that's in the past, that's not fair to that particular party because...
Well, it's not fair to your audience either, really, is it? Because they've heard all that before, that stuff. Dominic, do you hear me? Just stay there for a second. Let me go to Eddie, because I want to go to Eddie, Darianne and Sandra as well if I have time before the break. Sorry, Eddie, go ahead.
How are you, Noel? You well?
Good. Eddie, you've been listening to Dominic, I have to say, rock a sense. But in relation to RTE and where we go from here, I mean, they're losing money hand over fist. 61 million predicted in loss of revenue from the licence fee over the next 2 years. And they also need 40 million in additional funding as well. Oh, we've lost him. Sorry, Darianne, we'll let you ask you the same question.
Yeah, listen, Niall, what I want to ask you is, you said the other night that RTE lost, I think it was 47% of the licences.
I don't know. I know at one stage it was 15%, but I believe it's a lot higher than that now.
Okay, but what I want to know is, do you know, or can Jane find out, how much of us old age pensioners get our pensions paid by the government that goes direct to RTE?
In other words, is because you're being waived and you don't have to pay it over the age of 65, you're wondering, does that money then go to, or do the state pay?
Absolutely.
Well, hang on. I don't think it's like medical cards. The state doesn't pay RTE for every licence they're supposed to get for over 65s, but the state does fund RTE every year. For example, the Minister has already said this year she will give RTE 16 million, but she's not giving them the rest of the 40 million additional funding until she sees a strategic plan, which they say will be coming in the next few weeks. So they do give them money to make up for those losses, yeah.
Yeah, but
not specifically for the elderly's licence, no.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, if you were saying the other day 47% of people haven't paid their licence, plus...
I don't think I said 47%. You might have heard that somewhere else. I don't know what the figure is at the moment.
Okay, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's just what I thought I heard. But what I'm saying is, what about the amount of us old age pensioners who get our licences free, even though I don't have a television, I might add?
Yeah.
what does that make up? That would mean there's a higher percent of Irish people who will not pay their licenses.
I get where you're going. That you don't have a way of protesting because you don't pay it anyway.
Exactly.
Okay. By the way, would you miss RTE if it was gone?
No. And the funny thing is now, the only thing I would miss, and I reckon they could go out and do it on their own, is Fair City. Because the only reason why... No, and
probably the last thing I'd miss, personally speaking. But,
no, I know
but I know a lot of people watch it. I know.
Yeah, but the only reason why I enjoy watching it is because when you're living on your own and you just want to get out of your head, look at something.
That's not gonna. It's not gonna exercise your brain too much. I get that.
And I think those people who act in that thing could do it and produce it some other way.
Okay, well, hang on, because I want to get Sandra in just before the break as well. Sandra, hi.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Sandra? Derry Ann would only miss Fair City.
Oh, Niall, there was a time there I would sit down religiously and watch it with my husband, and I could nearly tell you the script before the programme was finished. You could nearly tell. I was so psychic with it.
Well, I think most soaps are pretty much the same, really, aren't they?
I could tell you what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, it bored the pants off me. I think it's gone downhill big time.
Okay, but RTE in general, if they had to close the shutter tomorrow, pull them down because they couldn't afford to run it anymore, would you miss it?
No.
Do you think we need a public service broadcaster?
No, I don't. I actually think it's a waste of money. And I, for one, wouldn't allow my husband to renew our TV licence because what are we paying for? It's rubbish.
Is there anything you watch on RTE? You watch the news?
I watch the news on TV3.
Yeah, well, that's probably the worst rebranding in history. Yeah, Virgin Media 1, you mean? Yeah, everyone still calls it TV3. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just don't like RT in general. The Late Show, I used to love it when Gay burned out the rest of his soul. So, I used
That's
to
a long
love
time
him.
ago, yeah.
He was.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, he was, yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah.
I thought Pat Kenny did an okay job. I just felt Ryan Tubridy that time was just thrown under the bus by everybody in RT. I watched the report when, the committee had him.
Oh, that was the best television ever, actually.
I learned an awful lot from it. And I really did feel he was thrown under the bus. And I felt sorry for the man. But, the fella Collins resigned today.
That's right.
When he was in front of the committee, he couldn't even tell when he was asked a question how much he was earning, with a smug face in him, as if to say, it's none of your business kind of thing. But it is our business, because it's our money's paying their wages.
I couldn't agree with you more. By the way, Dominic, just on a final note, in relation to the Oireachtas committee and everything that happened at RTE, a lot of people feel that Ryan Tubridy was thrown under the bus or was the kind of, the figurehead for the controversy. Do you believe that was unfair?
Yeah, it was completely unfair, and the reason why that is because everyone actually thinks when they start talking about salaries and things are concerned, people are getting mixed up between salaries and what he's for contract for service. I think I was listening the other night. Basically, you mentioned that you're self-employed yourself. No, was that correct?
Yep.
So basically, you're going to invoice You mentioned your boss as well, but you don't really have a boss as being self-employed. You have a client that you service, and you actually provide basically a service to, and you turn up, etc. And that's the contract of employment or contract for services. Yeah. And out of that, basically, Ryan Tubridy would have had to have a number of expenses, etc. And with that, he was allowed to work for any other employer. So he's purely self-employed.
But in saying that, RTE did give him a guarantee that they would pay him, even though there was part of that contract was for Renault, that if Renault didn't pay, that they would pay him, which really wasn't a good thing to be doing.
But are we blaming Ryan Tubridy for that, or are we going to blame?
I suppose what happened there was, if I was in the public sector and my wages or my salary or my contract fee yearly was to be published in a newspaper, and I seen it and I saw the figure was wrong, and I knew it was being paid for by taxpayers. When I say I saw the figure was wrong, that's not what I'm being paid. I actually get paid a bit more than that because I have a separate piece as well with Renault, or a deal with Renault as well. I think I would have to correct that publicly.
It's a tricky one because this isn't just about RTE. This happens this happens in everyday life as well. I mean, what I mean by that is other industries, etc. So if you're providing services to a company and then basically you look at those financial accounts at the end of the year and there's discrepancy on that person's financial accounts, is it for you then to contact revenue and say, hey, the client you're servicing is basically false reporting? Mm-hmm. It's a tricky one on that side of things concerned, and how do they calculate it, and how do they calculate this information, etc. Now, the
Oireachtas were pretty clear about that. That, I mean, one person, the Oireachtas, described it as fraud, but the Oireachtas were pretty clear about how this was misleading, and it was meant to mislead. In other words, they knew what they were doing was wrong in the way they were doing it.
Sorry, this is basic. Sorry, Ron. This is RTE knew exactly what they're doing as far as basically they're doing it. I mean, what do they call that account? Was it barter account?
The barter account, yeah. The famous barter account. Yeah.
Yeah, I said to my wife basically, I says, "Is there such a thing as a barter account in accounting?"
But that's not unusual, by the way. Yes.
No, but she's an accountant and what have you, and she says kind of like scoffed and says no. That's you
I spoke to somebody who's another CEO of a radio station around the time of the Oireachtas Committee, and he said there's nothing unusual about that. He said many radio stations and media have barter accounts. There's a company in England and they swap advertising for goods essentially.
Okay, and it's reported, yeah.
Yeah, I assume it has to be.
Well, from maybe I'm wrong, but from the outside in, it didn't look as if it was actually reported.
Yeah, it does look dubious, all right, doesn't it? It sounds dubious.
It looked to me as if basically it was a private slush fund, and that's basically what the Oireachtas was hanging on, and they were correct to do that.
Real people, real opinions, Real Talk Radio, the multi-award-winning Niall Boylan Show.